Hello and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. First off, my animated project is finally finished. You can see it now on my sister channel, Golden Age Video. I will give you a link to it in the description and at the end of this video. But now, we're going to discuss what the ancient Egyptians had to say about the judgment of the soul, and how that can inform modern Kemetic belief. So, break out your wraparound shades, and let's explore Judgment Day, Egyptian style. First, a bit of backstory on this month's topic, because you see, last year, at World Religion Day in January, I was basically harassed by a couple of kids that were from an evangelical Christian group, and they have been taught to believe that anyone not following their particular strand of Christianity is going to hell. Unfortunately, some strains of Christianity believe that all humanity is essentially wicked, and the only way to avoid damnation is to be good little evangelicals. Not all Christians are like that. There are Christian Universalists. There's a connection with the Unitarian Universalist Church there, but there are other Christian Universalists who believe that the crucifixion was meant to wipe away the sin for all of humanity, including modern pagans like us. And those are nicer Christians to be around. Darren is one of those. We need more like them. But, as pagans of an Egyptian persuasion, what are we to believe? Our most obvious source is the famous chapter 125 of the Book of the Dead. That's the actual Book of the Dead. There's another video where I talk about that. Chapter 125 is the chapter that has the 42 negative confessions, also called the Declarations of Innocence, and the very famous illustration showing Anubis weighing the heart of the deceased against the feather of truth. And I can show you a larger image of this. But while chapter 125 does lay out what the rules are, basically, it doesn't really say anything about how exactly violations of those rules are to be handled. Basically what the result of sin would be. And see, this is also where our obnoxious little evangelical friends seemed to lose their shit when I explained the weighing of the heart to them. Because they thought, well, you mean every little thing is going to get counted against you? One thing could be it? Well, they didn't really want the answer to that question. They were just trying to prove that only Jesus could save you from religion-induced anxiety. Sorry, kids. But a much deeper answer to our question comes from Egyptian literature. And by the way, this is volume 3 of Miriam Lichtheim's Ancient Egyptian Literature. I highly recommend this series. It's got a recent edition, and this is the older one. You can find them on Amazon, pretty cheap, but worth investing in, because it's the ancient Egyptians in their own words. And there were a cycle of stories that were written in Demotic, which is the last phase of Egyptian language before Coptic. This would have been during the Greco-Roman period. And that is when we get the cycle of stories about Setna Kaiamos, who is a high priest with legendary exploits based on the historical figure of Kaiamos, the high priest of Memphis and son of Ramesses the Great. We talked about him a little bit last year when we talked about lunar gods and the hidden book of Thoth. and mentioned him earlier in this year. But there's another story in here that involves Setna and his son Saosir. And his son Saosir is uncannily brilliant. There's a reason for that, and you read further in the story and you find out what's the secret behind Saosir. But at 12 years old, he takes his father to the underworld, and the things that they see there give you a really good idea of how they understood judgment and morality. And while some of the scenes in there show a little bit of Greek influence and kind of echo the story of Tantalus, there are others in here and other motifs that are purely Egyptian. And some scholars have even suggested that they inspired later Christian parables. But let me read this to you because it really gives you a better idea for how they understood that weighing of the heart. On a certain day, it happened that Setna was being purified for the banquet in his house, and the boy Saosir was to go to the banquet with him. At that moment, Setna heard the sound of wailing. He looked down from the window of his house and saw the coffin of a rich man being carried out to the cemetery with very loud wailing, and great were his honors. In another moment, as he was looking down, he saw the body of a poor man being carried out of Memphis, wrapped only in a mat, without anyone walking behind him. Setna said, "By Ptah, the great god, how much happier is the rich man who is honored with the sound of wailing than the poor man who is carried to the cemetery, without anyone walking behind him." Saosir said to his father, "May it go with you in the netherworld, as it will go with this poor man in the netherworld. May it not go with you as it will with this rich man in the netherworld." When Setna heard the words of Saosir, his heart became very sad. He said, "Do I hear the voice of my son?" As if to say, "What is my child saying to me?" The boy Saosir answered him, "If you wish, I will show you the poor man who was not mourned, and the rich man for whom all the wailing was done." Setna asked him, "How could you do this?" Saosir took his father by the hand, and he conducted Setna to a place in the western desert. Now there are breaks in the text, but they go through a number of gates, which is a classic Egyptian motif. It's pictured often in the Book of the Dead. They entered the 5th hall, and Setna saw the noble spirits standing in their ranks. But those who were accused of crimes were standing at the door, pleading, and the pivot of the door on the 5th hall was fixed in the right eye of a man who was pleading and lamenting loudly. And keep in mind, in ancient times, doors didn't have hinges mounted to the wall as we do. It was a heavy post that was set in a stone in the ground, and so the entire weight of that door was turning on that pivot. And so someone has been stuck with their eye, and the pivot of the door is in their eye, and they're wailing loudly. They entered the 6th hall, and Setna saw the gods of the tribunal, the inhabitants of the netherworld, standing in their ranks, while the servants of the netherworld stood making accusations. They entered the 7th hall, and Setna saw the mysterious form of Osiris, the great god, seated on his throne of fine gold, crowned with the Atef crown. Anubis, the great god, was on his left, the great god Thoth was on his right, and the gods of the tribunal of the inhabitants of the netherworld stood on his left and his right. The balance stood in the center before them, and they weighed the good deeds against the misdeeds, Thoth, the great god, writing, while Anubis gave the information to his colleague. He who would be found to have more misdeeds than good deeds is handed over to the devourer, that's Amit, who belongs to the Lord of the netherworld. His ba is destroyed together with his body, and he is not allowed to breathe ever again. He who would be found to have more good deeds than misdeeds is taken in among the gods of the tribunal of the Lord of the netherworld, while his ba goes to the sky, together with the august spirits, that would be the Aku. He who would be found to have good deeds equal to his misdeeds is taken in among the excellent spirits, who serve Sokar Osiris. Then Setna saw a rich man, clothed in a garment of royal linen, standing near the spot where Osiris was, and he was of very high rank. Setna was astounded by the things he saw in the netherworld. Saosir walked out in front of him and said, "My father, Setna, did you not see that rich man, clothed in a garment of royal linen, standing near the spot where Osiris is? He is the poor man whom you saw being carried out from Memphis with no one walking behind him and wrapped in a mat. They brought him to the netherworld. They weighed his misdeeds against the good deeds he had done on earth. They found his good deeds more numerous than his misdeeds in relation to his lifespan, which Thoth had assigned to him in writing, and in relation to his luck on earth. It was ordered by Osiris to give the burial equipment of that rich man, whom you saw being carried out from Memphis with great honors, to this poor man, and to place him among the noble spirits, as a man of God who serves Sokar Osiris and stands near the spot where Osiris is. That rich man whom you saw, they took him to the netherworld. They weighed his misdeeds against his good deeds. They found his misdeeds more numerous than the good deeds he had done on earth. It was ordered to imprison him in the netherworld. He is the man whom you saw with the pivot of the door of the netherworld fixed in his right eye, so that it opens and shuts on his eye, and his mouth is open in great lamentation. By Osiris, the great god, Lord of the netherworld, when I said to you on earth, may it go with you as it will with this poor man, may it not go with you as it will with this rich man, I knew what would happen to him." Setna said, "My son Saosir, many are the marvels I have seen in the netherworld." And he goes on to ask about other things that they had seen. Now here's the point that I think is worth emphasizing. Saosir explains to his father Setna that people are judged by the sum total of their deeds in relation to their lifespan and their luck. I take that to mean, in modern terms, if you live in poverty and hardship and never had a chance to do great deeds or to be a philanthropist, but you were kind and forthright and honest in spite of those difficulties, Jehuti is going to weigh that in your favor. And children who don't get a chance to grow up are going to find their heart as light as the feather. But if you had a long life, with plenty of advantages, lots of gifts from the gods, but you were stingy with your love and your good fortune, that will factor against you too. But, that said, it is not our place to judge other people. Remember, only if their bad deeds outweigh their good deeds does someone get punished or fed to Ammit, and that's up to Osiris. And if they manage to balance out their good and their bad, they get to stay in Duat. And only the gods know what that balance is. We don't have a broad enough view of the picture to see that. But we should all aim for tipping our own scales in favor of the good, because those are the ones that get to join Ra in the sunbark among the Aku, the august spirits, or the Ak-Ikar and Ra, the excellent spirits of Ra. Ultimately, you should do the best you can with what you have, because that's all Ra ever asks of you, whether you choose to follow him or not. And if you want to know more about the Declarations of Innocence from chapter 125 of the Book of the Dead, I did put together a short book form of that. That is available on Lulu.com, or you can get an autographed copy from my Etsy store. The links for both of those are in the description. Also, I talk about each of the 42 Declarations of Innocence in previous videos, and I'll include the links for those. Now, the links that I give in the back of this book, some of them are out of date by now, but the bibliography tells you where you can find various translations of chapter 125. So, one more fun resource. I also want to give a big, super duper shout out thank you to all of my super stickers and all of our Patreon peeps. It's now free to join Patreon, and I include a little something for everyone each month. The most recent thing was a link to my new animation project, but there will be more things not only for the Patreon peeps at large, but also exclusives for each tier. I'll be working on those shortly, so check it out. And next month, we will be back with more practical information for your Egyptian pagan and Kemetic practice. So, for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon, wishing you Senebti. Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com, and special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.
Cannot believe what I'm seeing!